Funding for the art show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, and viewers like you. Thank you.
In this edition of the art show, explore the art of peace.
I'm very against telling an artist, this is a peace gallery and this is what peace is supposed to look like.
A veteran session drummer tells his story.
The King Records, I just had to be ready in any event that they called me to perform.
And quilting is elevated to an art form.
Some people walk up and go, that's a quilt.
And it's all ahead on this edition of The Art Show. Hello, I'm Rodney Veal, and this is The Art Show. Each week, we bring you inspiring local, regional, and national artists and arts organizations. This week, we start with the Missing Piece Art Space in Dayton. Promoting social consciousness and respect for human rights, gallery owner Gabriella Pickett sees art as a powerful tool for conveying messages that can break through the cultural, ethnic, and religious barriers between people.
Home is where you are. So my home now is here, but I come from Rwanda. I came here because of the genocide and massacres. So I was looking for a peaceful place to be, and I found my peace. So this is my home.
I am struggling right now as a Caucasian woman with white privilege. And I have become so invested in the immigrant community that when I experience being treated differently because I am a white woman, I feel sick inside.
Peace is a state of mind. Sometimes we just cannot control the violence around us, the anger, the undesirable things. But the way we react to them, that's where peace comes.
3 women, 3 cultures, 3 very different life experiences. There is but one goal: to explore issues of peace through art.
Art allows you to be a change agent because you're putting your emotions into tangible things and putting it into the world. I have started an organization called The Compassionary, and we're focused on projects that will bring people together. The diversity of our community and the needs of our community coming together.
One of the things that I'm adamant about is art should be able to help break those partitions. Once you put a barrier between 2 countries or 2 cultures, whether it's a real barrier or an invisible one, it's really difficult to break it. And so that's where art comes. It really helps in one picture depict the other side. It makes us see what other people are suffering. Once you see a picture, then that image is with you. It's not gonna go away. What is peace? What is that supposed to look like? And it depends on each artist. And I'm very against telling an artist, this is a peace gallery and this is what peace is supposed to look like.
On Detroit Street in Dayton is a little-known art gallery, the Missing Piece Art Space. Gabriella Pickett, an artist herself, dreamed of owning her own gallery and studio. While working with International Red Cross in Europe, she was asked to organize an exhibition to benefit children in Estonia. With elbow grease and vision, she created the space for the exhibition, which went on to become the Missing Piece Art Space.
Art, it's a universal language. We don't have to know everybody else's language as long as we can depict emotions in a canvas, because it can create empathy. And to me, that's the trigger. That's the way that we can communicate. Not to mention that it's a way to explore our own feelings and issues that are bothering us so that other people can learn and see where we come from.
Gabriella and Jean are fostering empathy in Dayton's diverse communities through the Mexican tradition of Dia de los Muertos, which includes a parade and display of altars at Missing Piece Art Space.
It's whimsical, it's joyful, it actually takes the morbid out of death and makes it strangely palatable.
Not everybody can embrace Mexican art and the notion of the Day of the Dead, because we see death as a celebration of life.
Culturally, it's so unique. It's equalizing. We all have loved ones, we've all had loved ones pass, and we all have that memory. And to be able to come together and celebrate through this tradition is magnificent. So I created an altar for my dad this last year, and it was about art creating, and it was about finding ways that I could speak to my memory of my dad in a loving, honest way. I resolved things through that process that I didn't know I had unresolved.
In addition to curating the Missing Piece art space and organizing Dayton's Day of the Dead event, Gabriella has become the voice for immigrant reform in Dayton. It began with a knock on the door.
Originally, I started working with refugees from Central Africa. They literally came to the gallery asking for summer camps for the kids, and that's how I started working with them. Severa is just an amazing person. I believe in what she's doing, and that's why we partner with her.
Because of the war, many people died, so we have many kids who don't have parents. There is free schooling, but they need uniform, they need books, and then they need food. So some we give them school fees, others we pay for the uniform and materials, others we pay for like lunch for the whole year, and then they will be able to go to school and learn, because as we say, hungry stomach doesn't have ears.
Because of Missing Piece art space, Severa has improved her art skills and helped more children. In addition to selling her own jewelry, she buys items from artisans and orphans back home, sells them here, and sends the money back to pay for their school fees.
For me, when that lady, that woman, that child is doing the art, like maybe he's sewing or weaving, she has this peace of mind. She's sitting with other people who are in the same conditions. They talk, they live, they have that smile. So it keeps them live positively. As I said, peace, I understand that it starts by your heart, your mind. So it gives them peace by sewing, by doing that.
If you can sit with a pile of materials and begin to use your own memories to create something for someone else to see, there's a power in that expression that is beyond words. I think also in a community where we have so many languages, whatever you choose to use to create something that somehow is going to express a deeper set of feelings and beliefs and experiences, then we can build empathy between each other by sharing that art.
When I help somebody put a smile on their face, oh, I'm so happy. That's my big joy.
I don't expect people to come in here and go out the door, with a totally different perspective of life, but I would like to just instill a little seed, for them to question their own social constructs, their own personal beliefs, and with the hope that maybe what I know as a norm is not necessarily true.
In addition to taking in the gallery, you can also extend compassion by shopping at Piece on Fifth, a commerce store located in Missing Piece Art Space on Detroit Street. Piece on Fifth is changing the conversation about modern-day slavery by offering handmade products made with zero slave labor. For gallery hours and events, visit missingpieceart.org. Southwest Ohio is home to a lengthy music history. Today, remnants of this past can still be found around every corner. Philip Paul was a major contributor to the historical music scene of Cincinnati, and lucky for us, he's still here to tell his tale of experience.
A drummer for over 70 years, Philip Paul was the principal session drummer at Cincinnati's King Records, a groundbreaking independent record label that would leave an indelible mark on American music history and would release what are today considered icons of American music. At King, Paul laid the beats for recording sessions that resulted in some of the most influential albums of the early rhythm and blues era, recordings which would later inform new genres of music, rock and roll, soul, and funk. Having started playing drums at age 12, it could be said that music was in his blood.
My mother was from Puerto Rico. My father was from St. Croix, Virgin Islands, and they migrated to New York, and that's where I was born. I had a family of all musicians, really. I had an uncle who played drums. I became fascinated by the way he did that. And my father noticed this, and he asked me if I was serious about wanting to play. So I told him yes. So he bought me a set of drums, and I got the 10 lessons, and I really got into it then. And I would say that's when my really serious interest in music began. My father used to play like house parties in New York, so he decided to take me on one of these jobs one night. So that was my first gig, as they call it. Many years later, I started working all over New York, and we were playing the Savoy Ballroom in New York, and Tiny Bradshaw was the smaller group. And during one of the breaks, Tiny Bradshaw came over to me and said, "I like the way you play. I'd like for you to join my band." So, I said, yeah, but, you never expect those things to materialize. But it did. Several months later, he called me and asked me would I come down to Cincinnati and join him at the famous Cotton Club in Cincinnati. So I did that. I didn't know myself what to expect, but I came down to Cincinnati, and that's when I joined Tiny Bradshaw.
At the time, the music was changing after World War II. The big bands were a thing of the past. One thing about the Tiny Bradshaw group that we talk about here was it was a small band. It wasn't 5 saxes and 3 trumpets and a couple of trombones. They usually one each of each horn, but they played like big band arrangements. It was one of those things where the group sounded bigger than it was, and it was that transitional sound. It wasn't playing swing. It was kind of a harder R&B, and with the addition of Phil Paul and his brushes, it started playing some subtler music. Soft was a real good example of that.
Well, Tiny Bradshaw was on the contract to King Records as one of their artists. We decided to record a tune by the name of Soft, and they asked me to play brushes on this, which is a far cry from the Sticks. Soft was the big hit on that recording, and this went all over the country. And as a result of that, we made about 3 or 4 albums with my playing the brushes. So that's how I developed a reputation for playing brushes.
This launched the beginning of a 12-year career at King Records, where Philip Paul would perform on over 350 sessions and would create beats for such American music icons as The Twist, Fever, and Hideaway.
Sid Nathan, he knew what he wanted, but he had a hard way of trying to convey it to the musicians. And we had very good musicians at King Records. I remember one time, he came down, when we were doing The Twist, he came down to the studio, and he didn't like what I was playing. So he grabbed the sticks out of my hand, and that's a cardinal sin with me. Please don't touch my instrument, don't touch anything. Anyway, he said, "I want you to play something like this." He said, blah, blah, blah. And he went back up in the studio, and we said, "All right, let's now cut it." And you know what I did? I played the same beat that I was playing before he came down the studio, and that made that record a hit, The Twist, because it's the beat that really propelled that tune. Sid Nathan, he was a very bombastic kind of man, he he asked me one day. He said, we'd like for you to become a session drummer. So I said, what is that? He said, well, you'll record for all of the artists on the contract to King. So I said, fine. He said, well, one thing I want you to do is I want you to go to the UC Conservative of Cincinnati and study some more. So it's very valuable, because at King Records I had to play all kinds of music, not only rhythm and blues. I had to play country, I had to play jazz, and I just had to be ready in any event that they called me to perform.
An important innovator of American popular music in the second half of the 20th century, King Records founder Sid Nathan was innovative in other ways.
King was very innovative in its business practices. They had their own distribution and their own pressing plant. So you could literally walk in the morning with an idea for a song and walk out that evening with the finished record in your hand. So the King session musicians, of which Philip was one, had to work very quickly. They had to be ready to do, on any given day, they had to be ready for anything. And that was one of the things that being a session musician at King entailed. These guys could play anything, they could play everything, and they could play it at the drop of a hat.
I remember he called me one day and he said, we want you to record with a country artist here. He said, no, you've never done that before, but we just want you to play whatever you feel. And I think it was Cowboy Copus or something like that.
Alabama. Look out now.
He came in and this country group, the guy had on a cowboy hat and everything. I said, oh, gracious. So he said, I said, what we gonna do? He said, anything you want. So they played and they started playing, and I just picked up a brush with the right hand, a stick in the left hand, and started playing a beat. He said, that's great, let's cut it. And it worked. And as a result of that, I played on many other country recordings. Moon Mulligan, Midwestern Hayride. And they came to Cincinnati to record, and they called me to do all those things.
During the war, he had, I would say the staff at King during World War II was probably half black. He had 10 or 12 Japanese Americans working there, which I would think would have been pretty unusual. At King, all the company functions were integrated, all of the departments were integrated.
I remember I first came to Cincinnati, and I was working in the club with a white saxophone player friend of mine, Jimmy McGarry, and we would play a set and come out on the street and go across the street to a coffee shop. They wouldn't serve me, they'd serve him. But it was different at King Records. Sid Nathan didn't care what color you are, and I think that's one of the reasons for his success.
Another reason for King's success was Nathan's eye for spotting artists with popular appeal, and the King session musicians were the musical architects that helped propel their tunes into hits.
A lot of the artists, you have to remember, didn't have too much experience. Some of them did, but some of them didn't. So it was kind of difficult working with a lot of them. One of the last things we did was like Freddie King with Hideaway. He was a wonderful guitar player. We didn't have to worry about doing 3, 4, 5, sometimes 20 takes. He would say, I'm going to record this. I want you guys to listen to this. And he'd start playing, and we'd start joining in. He said, that sounds good. Let's cut it. And we'd cut it. We did Hideaway in about 3 or 4 takes.
From a storyteller's perspective, Phil Paul is a great story. I mean, it's just growing up in New York, the center of the jazz universe, coming out of the Afro-Caribbean tradition, which, let's face it, is the heart of percussion. Phil says he didn't plan any of it. I don't think you could have planned any of this. Phil is not out there to say, look what a great drummer I am. Phil plays the music. And I think that's the thing that's kept him, that's what a great session drummer does. Beyond anything you can, do. I mean, obviously he's a great player, but the goal is to make great music, and that can be two different things.
Down by the seaside, sifting sand.
Despite their monumental contributions, the King session artists labored in relative anonymity, receiving only the basic session fees paid to sidemen during the 50s and 60s. After Philip Paul's 12-year career at King Records, he became a full-time jazz drummer, touring nationally and playing local combos, still performing today and keeping beats in Cincinnati nightclubs. For Paul, it has always been, and still is, all about the music.
You got to swing. I think a drummer's responsibility is to make the music exciting and moving, and I have a philosophy about when I play. I look at the audience, and if I don't see somebody patting their foot or drumming their fingertips on something, it's not happening. And I try to reach that point every night. If I'm not doing that, I'm not playing very well that night.
Xavier University is looking to make a new King studio reality. The new facility will feature the dynamic integration of music and arts education, entrepreneurial training, and cultural history all under one roof. To read about the entire vision, visit xavier.edu/communitybuilding. Quilting might conjure up images of basic patterns and primary colors, but at the International Quilt Festival in Houston, Texas, quilt makers are turning the medium on its head. The result? Works of art notable for both complexity of design and nuance in color.
This is the largest annual quilt show in the world. We get around 60,000 people from literally all parts of the world. We have over 1,500 quilts on display here, but we also have over 1,000 vendor booths. There's no shortage of things to shop for. We have upwards of 350 different classes, basically everything you could want to know about quilting. We have all of these gorgeous quilts that are on display. Some are traditional quilts, like you might see on a bed. Others are redefining that a little bit. Natural settings, floral imagery, botanical imagery, these are all really popular themes across the spectrum of quilting.
My name is Carol Breyer Fallert Gentry. I am a quilt artist. That means I make fine art, but I'm using traditional quilting materials and traditional quilting techniques. A block from my studio in Paducah, Kentucky, there's a Bradford pear tree that sheds leaves in all these amazing colors and patterns. So I picked up a leaf and scanned it and started playing with the design and abstracting it and then adding color in. The whole thing was drawn full size on paper, and then I cut out each shape from the paper and attached it to fabric and cut around each one, and so they became separate templates that I pieced together to make the complex design. And then I do a lot of quilting with different colors of thread, and that's really the completion of the piece of art.
We have actually a number of international exhibits this year, one from Taiwan, one from Jerusalem. And then we always have that international aspect to our show because we have a judge show component in which the world's top quilters send their works to compete.
Every time I'm going to Jerusalem, I always feel such an holy spirit, and everyone who goes to Jerusalem says so. It's something special in this city. Every quilt is really different, and everyone has his own Jerusalem. So you can find many, many different Jerusalem here.
We have a couple of exhibits here from the Studio Art Quilt Associates. Basically, they're an organization of art quilters, and their work really represents the cutting edge of contemporary quilt artistry. A really popular movement in quilting right now is called modern quilting. It's based in tradition, traditional techniques, and even sometimes some slightly traditional designs, but then tweaked a bit. So they're going to use more modern colors, modern design aesthetic, a lot of negative space, things that you might not expect to see in quilting. Some people walk up and go, that's a quilt, because it looks like a photograph or a painting, but it is in fact constructed with fabric.
This exhibition is called What's for Dinner, and we thought it would be interesting to do a piece that looked sort of like a place setting, and also really wanted to have the exhibition look like a dinner party.
There's one that's a sushi one, and it's three-dimensional, and it's wonderful. It like comes to life on the dinner plate, where the octopus legs, and it has buttons on it. It's just graphically stunning to look at.
One of my favorite unusual ones is a meal ready to eat, and it talks about how you get this, how you get this thing that's in a package and looks about as unappetizing as you can, and the artist was fantasizing about being able to eat something other than that.
It's 3 layers.
A quilt is 3 layers stitched together, and it doesn't matter what you stitch what to what.
And it doesn't matter what size it is, and it doesn't really matter what the format is.
There are some very talented quilters right here in our own backyard. The Miami Valley Quilters Guild meets at 7 p.m. on the second Tuesday of each month at the Fairborn Senior Citizen Center. For details, log on to MiamiValleyQuiltersGuild.org or like them on Facebook. And that wraps it up for this edition of the Art Show. Please take some time out of your busy schedule to take in some arts and culture. And until next time, I'm Rodney Veal, and thanks for watching.
Funding for the Art Show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, Ohio Arts Council, Ohio Humanities Council, and viewers like you. Thank you.